"Excuse me, sir, but my mother has a ring exactly like that," said the 26-year-old black waiter, gently pointing at the billionaire's hand. Silence immediately fell over the most luxurious restaurant in Manhattan. Henry Benton, the 62-year-old real estate tycoon with a net worth of $3 billion, felt the blood in his veins turn to ice as he looked at the young man who had just served him a 1-200 glass of wine. The glittering ring on his hand was one of a kind, a Burmese ruby, surrounded by diamonds, custom made in 1942. Only 2 such rings existed in the entire world. "No way," Benton muttered, his voice betraying an unmistakable edge of unease. The waiter, whose name tag read Lucas, maintained a professional smile, but in his eyes was a haunting calm, the kind found only in those who have uncovered truths too big to ignore. Lucas Brooks had only been working at the restaurant for 3 months, but he knew every detail about the lives of the regular patrons, especially Henry Benton, the man who always sat at table 17 every Wednesday night. Always alone, always arrogant, always treating the staff as if they were invisible. "Maybe it's just a coincidence," Lucas said, though his voice carried a subtle hint of irony. "Anyway, my mother always said the ring was a gift from her former boss, a very generous man." Benton gripped his napkin so tightly that the fabric tore. His hand trembled slightly as he struggled to process what he had just heard. The second ring, the one he had given to the young maid in 1995, was supposed to have disappeared forever along with her. Lucas watched every minute expression on the billionaire's face, every bead of sweat beginning to form on his artificially tanned forehead, every desperate attempt to maintain composure in the face of a truth that could destroy a reputation built over decades. "Does your mother still have that ring?" Benton asked, trying to sound casual and failing miserably. "She used to," Lucas corrected, and for the first time his professional smile wavered. "She passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. Couldn't afford proper treatment." The weight of those words echoed across the table like a silent accusation. Benton knew exactly who Lucas's mother was. He knew what he had done to her. He knew why she had never spoken out. He knew why she had left the city, taking only the ring, a silent testament to an injustice that had lingered for decades. Lucas straightened up, adjusting the tray with the monica of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. "Do you need anything else, sir? Perhaps a photo of my mother? She kept quite a few from her time working for important people." Benton's eyes widened. This was no longer a coincidence. This was a silent declaration of war, delivered with the surgical precision of someone who had planned every word, every gesture, every moment. "Not necessary," Benton replied, his voice pitched higher than usual. Lucas nodded, still wearing that unsettling calm that made the air feel thick. "Of course, sir. I'll be right here if you change your mind. After all, some stories deserve to be told, don't they?" As he walked away from the table, Lucas could feel Benton's desperate gaze burning into his back. The plan he had spent 2 years preparing was finally in motion. And the best part? Benton still had no idea just how deep the hole he dug for himself truly was. Benton finished his meal in silence, but Lucas could feel the billionaire's eyes tracking his every movement across the restaurant. It was exactly the reaction he had hoped for, that toxic blend of paranoia and arrogance, the very combination that had ruined countless lives over the years. 2 hours later, as his shift ended, Lucas saw Benton waiting outside the restaurant, leaning against a silver Bentley worth more than most people made in a year. "We need to talk," Benton said, trying to sound authoritative. But Lucas could see the anxiety behind the facade. "Yes, Mr. Benton. I just got off shift," Lucas said as he walked toward the man who had haunted his childhood nightmares, still wearing that same unnerving calm that made Benton feel like he was losing control of a situation he should have completely owned. "What was your mother's name again?" "Monica Brooks," Lucas replied simply. "She used to clean your estate in Greenwich back in 1995. The name hit Benton like a punch to the gut. Monica Brooks, the 19-year-old girl he had hired when she was desperate for work, pregnant, and abandoned by her boyfriend. Monica had been the one who witnessed those special meetings between him and the Russian investors in the basement of his estate, where forged documents were signed and dirty money changed hands. I don't recall anyone named Monica, Benton lied, but his voice betrayed the vivid memories he was trying and failing to bury. Lucas smiled, not the professional smile he wore inside the restaurant, but something far more dangerous. Memory's a funny thing, isn't it? My mother remembered everything, especially the night you gave her that ring. That night was in December of 1995. Monica had been cleaning the office when she heard Benton shouting into the phone about trouble with the authorities and evidence that needed to disappear. She hid behind the curtain, listening closely as he ranted about bribes to zoning officials and forged documents that allowed illegal construction in a protected reserve. When Benton discovered her standing there with a rag in her hand, his eyes burned with a cold fury she would never forget. "How much did you hear?" he demanded, stepping closer. "Nothing, sir. I was just cleaning." But they both knew it was a lie. "Your mother was a discreet woman," Benton said now, choosing his words more carefully. "She always respected her employer's privacy." "Discreet?" Lucas gave a quiet laugh. "That's an interesting way to describe someone who was threatened with death if she ever spoke about what she saw." The memory returned with its full force. Benton had given Monica the ring that night, not as a gift, but as a permanent warning to stay silent. "This ring is worth more than you'd make in 10 years, he had said. "But if you open your mouth about anything you heard here, I promise you, and that baby will disappear without a trace." Monica had taken the ring with trembling hands. Knowing she wasn't accepting jewelry, she was accepting a life sentence of silence. "She never said a word," Lucas continued. "She moved to Detroit, raised me alone, worked 3 jobs at once. She always said the truth would come out eventually." Benton tried to regain control of the situation. "Listen, kid, I don't know what your mother thought she heard, but I can make you an offer. A better job, maybe. $50,000 to forget all this crazy talk." A bribe, exactly what Lucas had been expecting. Benton still believed that everyone had a price, that every problem could be solved with money. $50,000, Lucas repeated, pretending to consider it. "Interesting. My mother died with $230,000 in medical debt. The insurance wouldn't cover the experimental treatment that might have saved her life." The irony in Lucas's voice was sharp as a blade. $50,000. It's almost an insult, isn't it? Cold sweat trickled down Benton's back. This waiter wasn't a desperate victim who could be bought. There was calculation in the way he spoke, as if every word was part of a larger plan. "All right, 100,000, Benton offered, his voice now tinged with desperation. "Final offer." Lucas slowly shook his head. "You still don't get it, do you? This was never about the money." "Then what do you want?" "Justice," Lucas replied simply. "My mother lived in fear for 29 years, moving from city to city every time she thought you had found us, working herself to exhaustion because she never dared use a reference from your estate, dying in silence because she believed that if she ever spoke out, I'd be the one to pay the price." The truth was, Monica had tried to tell her story many times over the years. First, to a local reporter in Detroit who mysteriously pulled the article at the last minute. Then to a human rights attorney whose office was broken into just a week later, with all related files stolen. With every failed attempt, Monica came to understand more clearly the true extent of Benton's power. "She died believing you were untouchable," Lucas said. "But a lot has changed in the past few years, hasn't it?" Benton tried one last threat. "Watch your mouth, kid. I've got lawyers who can ruin your life with a single phone call." "I'm sure you do," Lucas replied, his voice still calm. "But I have something your lawyers will never be able to buy off or intimidate." "Oh yeah? What's that?" Lucas smiled again. And this time, Benton felt a true chill spread through his body. "Patience," Lucas said, "and a plan that's been 2 years in the making." As he got back into his car, leaving Benton standing alone on the sidewalk, Lucas felt the weight of the promise he had whispered at his mother's grave. Monica Brooks had died in silence, but Henry Benton was about to learn that her son had inherited not just the ring, but the memory of injustice. Every new threat, every pathetic attempt at a bribe, only fueled something inside Lucas that men like Benton could never understand, a will forged in years of quiet endurance, sharpened by an unshakable belief that the time had come for the truth to be revealed. What Benton didn't know was that every word of their conversation had been recorded by a discreet device tucked into Lucas's jacket pocket. And that was only the first move in a game the billionaire hadn't even realized. He'd already lost. In the 2 weeks that followed, Benton tried everything to make Lucas back down. First came the psychological pressure. Anonymous phone calls in the middle of the night, unfamiliar cars parked outside the small apartment where Lucas lived with 2 college friends. Then came the professional pressure, a casual conversation between Benton and the restaurant owner about a troublesome employee who might damage the establishment's reputation. But Lucas had learned from Monica that patience was a weapon far more powerful than any direct confrontation. Every attempt at intimidation only confirmed what he already knew: Benton was desperate. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into," a voice said behind him as he waited for the bus on a rainy Thursday evening. Lucas turned around and saw a man in his early 40s, dressed in an expensive but understated suit, eyes sharp and calculating. "You must be Henry Benton," Lucas said. "Finally decided to show up." "I'm Michael Harrison," the man replied, his attorney, "and I can assure you, you don't want this going to court." Lucas smiled, the smile that was fast becoming his trademark. "Court? Who said anything about court? I only mentioned that my mother had an interesting ring." Harrison studied Lucas more closely. There was something in the young man's composure that didn't align with the profile of a desperate victim he had expected. "My client is prepared to make a final offer, $250,000. You sign a non-disclosure agreement, and everyone goes on with their lives." "Interesting," Lucas replied, pretending to consider it. "But I have a counter-offer." Harrison raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because this was never about money, Mr. Harrison. It's about something your client lost a long time ago and will never be able to buy back." "And what's that?" "A good night's sleep." The bus arrived, and Lucas stepped on, leaving Harrison standing alone in the rain with a bewildered expression. This wasn't the behavior of someone who could be easily threatened or bought. What neither Harrison nor Benton knew was that Lucas wasn't acting alone. 3 months before applying for the restaurant job, he had reached out to the one person who could help him navigate the complex legal world surrounding men like Benton. Ambesha Lee was an assistant district attorney in the Southern District of New York, specializing in financial crimes and corruption. More importantly, she had once met Monica Brooks. "Your mother came to my office in 2018, Ambesha explained during her first meeting with Lucas. "She brought documents, dates, names, everything we needed to launch an investigation." "Then why didn't you do anything?" "Because," just 48 hours later, our key witness, a former employee who was ready to corroborate Monica's story, died in a car accident, and 2 other contacts vanished from the city without a trace. Lucas felt that familiar surge of anger rise within him, the kind he had learned to turn into resolve. "But things are different now." "They are," Ambesha agreed. "The Panama Papers scandal, new financial transparency laws, public pressure on major corporations. In 2018, Benton was untouchable. Today, he's a target." Ambesha was the one who had guided Lucas on how to record every interaction with Benton. Every meeting, every bribe, every threat, all carefully documented and categorized. "He's behaving exactly as we predicted," Ambesha said, as she reviewed the restaurant recording. "Arrogant, desperate, and committing new crimes every time he tries to cover up the old ones." "How much longer do we need?" Lucas asked. 2 weeks. There's a federal audit of his company next month. If we have enough evidence of extortion and intimidation beforehand, it'll be the final push to launch a full-scale criminal investigation. Lucas nodded, but his mind was already several moves ahead. Formal justice mattered, yes. But he had some very personal plans for Henry Benton. 2 days later, Lucas received an unexpected call at work. "Lucas Brooks, this is William Benton." The name stopped Lucas cold. Henry's son, and he was very eager to talk. William Benton was everything his father was not. Principled, compassionate, and genuinely committed to social justice. At 35, he had distanced himself from the family business after uncovering the true origins of the Benton fortune. "My father doesn't know I'm calling you," William explained during their quiet meeting at a discreet cafe in Brooklyn. "But I've known about Monica Brooks for years." "How?" Lucas asked. "Because I hired a private investigator when I first suspected our family wealth was built on something rotten. They found evidence of at least 6 families who had been silenced or threatened over the years." William slid a folder across the table. "These are copies of documents I retrieved from my father's office, fraudulent contracts, records of bribe payments to officials, correspondence discussing how to handle troublesome witnesses." Lucas opened the folder, and his heart began to race. It was all there. Decades of systemic corruption, documented in precise detail. "Why are you giving this to me?" he asked. "Because justice delayed doesn't mean justice denied," William said. "And because I want my son to grow up in a world where his father chose to do what's right, not stay silent to protect the family name." That night, Lucas called Ambasha with just one sentence: "We just won the game." But even as they began organizing the evidence that would destroy Henry Benton, Lucas knew the real reckoning hadn't come yet. Because some crimes couldn't be paid for with prison time or financial ruin. Some crimes could only be redeemed through the complete collapse of everything the perpetrator held as identity as power. And Lucas had spent the past 2 years preparing exactly for that. While Benton slept soundly in his mansion, still believing he was dealing with a desperate young man who could be bought or intimidated, Lucas was putting the final touches on a strike that would make the billionaire question every decision he'd made in the past 30 years. Official justice would be just the appetizer. The main course would be personal, profound, and unforgivable. The following Wednesday night was the annual Elite Charity Gala in Manhattan. 300 guests, each ticket worth $50, broadcast live across major social media platforms. As he did every year, Henry Benton had purchased an entire table, eager to flaunt his generosity in front of the cameras, posing with politicians, shaking hands with fellow billionaires, delivering speeches about social responsibility from a man who had spent 3 decades destroying lives to build his financial empire. Lucas arrived at the hotel as an outsourced catering staff member, dressed in a simple uniform, tray in hand, completely invisible to the kind of guests who never bothered to look a server in the eye. "Champagne, Mr. Benton?" Lucas offered the tray as he approached the table where the billionaire was posing for a photo with the mayor. Benton recognized him instantly, his face draining of color. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Working," Lucas replied calmly. "Just like my mother was when you threatened to kill her." Conversation around the table fell silent. The mayor and the other guests exchanged confused glances, instantly sensing the sharp tension between the two men. "Security!" Benton shouted. But Lucas raised a hand, his voice still calm. "No need for that, Mr. Benton. I'm just here to return something that belongs to you." Lucas placed a sealed envelope on the table, right in front of the cameras, still broadcasting live. Inside were copies of all the documents William had provided, along with recordings of every attempted bribe and threat from the past few weeks. "You always said everyone has a price," Lucas said, loud enough for the microphones to pick up. "But you forgot to ask, what's the price of justice?" Benton tore open the envelope with trembling hands. As he read, his expression shifted from confusion to utter horror. 30 years of crimes, meticulously documented. "This... where did you get this?" "From your own son," Lucas replied simply. "William has a conscience, something you never managed to grow." The entire hall fell into absolute silence. Cameras panned between the face of Henry Benton, now crumbling under the weight of panic, and the cold, steady expression of Lucas, a look he had spent years perfecting. Ambasha Lee entered at that exact moment, flanked by 4 federal agents. It was no coincidence. Lucas had timed every detail to ensure the most devastating blow would be delivered in full public view. "Henry Benton," Ambasha announced clearly. You are under arrest for extortion, bribery of public officials, tax fraud, and witness intimidation." The silence shattered with the snap of handcuffs locking around his wrists and the blinding flashes of cameras capturing the fall of a titan. Benton looked around in desperation, searching for an escape, an ally, anything to save him from the public humiliation unfolding before him. "This is a mistake," he shouted as agents led him away. "I have lawyers. I have connections." Lucas stepped closer to where Benton stood in handcuffs. "You know what the difference between us is, Mr. Benton? You always thought power was about taking what you want from those weaker than you. I've learned that real power is using that very system, the one you built, to protect yourself, to bring down the people who think they're above the law." Benton, gasping for some final blow, hissed, "You think this brings your mother back? You think this changes anything?" Lucas smiled. Not an angry smile, but the quiet satisfaction of someone who had finally seen justice done. "No, it won't bring my mother back, but it makes sure that other mothers won't have to go through what mine did. And sometimes, that's enough." As Benton was led away, Lucas turned toward the cameras still broadcasting live. "My name is Lucas Brooks. My mother's name was Monica Brooks. For 29 years, she lived in fear of a man who believed he was above the law. Today, we proved no one is." The event host whispered something urgently about cutting the feed, but it was far too late. The story had already exploded across social media, the video being shared thousands of times per minute. William Benton stepped up beside Lucas amid the chaos of the crowd. "Thank you," he said simply, "for doing what I never had the courage to do." "Thank you for giving me the tools to do what's right," Lucas replied. As the gala guests murmured and whispered among themselves, scrambling to distance themselves from the scandal as quickly as possible, Lucas stepped back from the chaos, calm, composed, and steady. Before Benton's reputation could stain theirs, Lucas discreetly pulled a small recording device from his pocket and handed it to Ambesha. "Tonight's conversation," he explained. "He tried to bribe me again just before you arrived." Ambesha shook her head, visibly impressed. "You recorded everything. My mother always said the truth finds its way out. I just gave it a little help." In the next few minutes, as the news spread like wildfire, 3 more of Benton's victims stepped forward, inspired by Lucas's courage. Families that had been silenced for decades finally found their voices. Benton's empire began to collapse in real time, stocks plummeting, partners severing ties, and federal investigations opening across multiple states. The illusion of invincibility shattered, and for the first time in decades, Henry Benton was no longer feared, he was exposed. That night, Lucas left the hotel with a sense of quiet relief. His mother could finally rest. The promise he had whispered at her grave 2 years earlier had been fulfilled. As he walked past a newsstand on a Manhattan street, where the first copies of the special edition had just gone on sale, Lucas stopped. The front page headline read, "Billionaire caught in live scandal. Son exposes his own father." Lucas bought a copy, not out of pride, but to be certain that Monica Brooks's story had finally been told the way she deserved. On the cover, his photo appeared beside hers. 2 generations, united in a fight for justice. It wasn't just revenge. It was proof that the very systems built to protect the powerful could also be wielded to protect the powerless, if someone was patient and clever enough to turn the gears the right way. It was turning pain into purpose, silence into the beginning of a revolution. 6 months after Benton's arrest, Lucas Brooks sat in an office overlooking Central Park, not as a guest, but as the owner. The Monica Brooks Foundation, established using a portion of the assets recovered from Benton's fraudulent schemes, had already helped 43 families who had once been silenced or threatened by corporate power. Henry Benton, meanwhile, was awaiting trial in a federal detention center, abandoned by his former high society allies, like rats fleeing a sinking ship. His lawyers had successfully petitioned to reduce his bail to a mere $50 million, a sum now impossible, with his assets frozen. "Ironic, isn't it?" Ambesha Lee remarked during a meeting at the foundation. "He's spent his life buying people off, And when he finally needed real friends, he learned money can't buy genuine loyalty. William Benton had taken over the family business, implementing strict ethical reforms and launching a compensation program for his father's victims. "Some legacies need to be rebuilt from the rubble," he said at a press conference, one Lucas watched from his office. The case became a landmark in legal history. Prosecutors in 5 other states launched similar investigations, using the framework Ambesha and Lucas had developed to combat corporate intimidation. The press called it the Brooks Doctrine, a new foundation for protecting witnesses in white-collar crime cases. Lucas never returned to waiting tables, but he kept a photo of the restaurant staff on his desk, a reminder of where the journey began. Some of his former co-workers now worked at the foundation. Others had landed better jobs thanks to personal recommendation letters Lucas had written himself. The most moving story came 3 months after Benton's arrest. A 60-year-old woman named Patricia Johnson came to the foundation with a story almost identical to Monica Brooks's, threatened, silenced, and forced to live in fear for decades. But this time, someone was ready to listen and take action. "My mother passed, believing she was alone in this fight," Lucas said during the opening hearing of the Johnson case. "Today, no family has to fight alone." Benton made one final desperate move, offering to name other corrupt businessmen in exchange for a lighter sentence, but he quickly discovered that even his dirtiest secrets had lost their worth. The elite circles he once protected now treated him like radioactive waste. On the day of sentencing, Lucas was present in the courtroom. 25 years in federal prison. If he lived, Benton would walk out of prison at 87 if he was still strong enough to walk at all. When their eyes met for the last time, Lucas felt neither anger nor satisfaction, only the quiet peace of someone who had turned pain into purpose. "He asked me if I felt rewarded," Lucas told William after the sentencing. "I said, revenge is too small a word for what I felt. It was justice. It was closure. It was proof that the system can still work if the right people choose to make it work." The foundation grew rapidly. Volunteer lawyers, retired investigators, and idealistic journalists all came forward, eager to be part of something that genuinely changed lives. Lucas had discovered that his true calling wasn't serving tables. It was serving justice. 1 year after Benton's arrest, Lucas was invited to speak at the graduation ceremony of a law school. The very school his mother once dreamed of attending before pregnancy cut that dream short. "Monica Brooks never got the chance to fight for justice in a courtroom," Lucas told the graduating class. "But she taught me that justice isn't the privilege of those with degrees. It's the responsibility of those with courage." His mother's ring now hung in the main hall of the foundation, beside a small plaque that read, "Monica Brooks, 1976, 2023, taught us that silence forced upon the powerless is not the end, but the beginning of a fight for those who love enough to carry it forward." Benton had once used power and wealth to rewrite the story in whatever way he pleased. But he learned that some forces are stronger than fortune. Memory, justice, and the resolve of a son who refused to let his mother's legacy be buried in silence. Lucas Brooks proved that the best revenge isn't destroying the one who hurt you. It's building something so strong, so good, that the evil they once sowed becomes irrelevant in the face of what you've created. "My mother used to say, 'The truth has legs,'" Lucas said quietly, gazing out his office window. "Sometimes it just needs someone to teach it how to run."